Hi everybody, this is the Earl. You can find me on the Marvel Champions Discord answering rules questions or doing the Card Text podcast with Bob and Scott, or here on YouTube where I have a variety of videos playing through all of the scenarios with a variety of heroes, using all the aspects, going around not every hero and aspect combination against every scenario, because that would be crazy. Although, who knows, maybe one day if I keep recording 2 videos a week, it'll come to that. And also I have some what if videos where I consider some possible scenarios, ways things could have gone if only Marvel Champions had been a little bit different. What's one small change we could make? So you can check out some of the alternate hero packs that I have, kind of alternate precons that were basically what if scenarios, not designed to be, much better precons, not really much better than they are, but kind of more in line with what the core set was and the promise that offered. So then you can also check out, I have a couple of scenarios. This is the second scenario that I'm reworking, tweaking a little bit, although this is a more significant tweak, but you can check out Risky Business, and what if Risky Business was riskier. So today we're going to look at Absorbing Man. So, way back when Rise of Red Skull came out, Rise of Red Skull was great, still great box, but there was some issues with it being too easy, and I think Absorbing Man was like at the center of that. Sure, the campaign was maybe a little easy. It gave you a little bit too much power, I think, given how much the scenarios ramped up. I don't think that the scenarios needed to necessarily get harder as you ramped up. I think having them get harder like independent of you ramping up would have been a good idea. GM Galaxy Most Wanted took that too far and also made the scenarios get harder as you gained more. Like every time you get something, the villain got something commensurate. I think it would be better if the scenario was just, I think what they should do, what would be ideal, is if the the scenarios are appropriate scenario difficulty, and the campaign itself just adds on more as you go, and you get bonuses from earlier in the campaign to use later in the campaign. That's cool. You get stronger. The campaign scenarios are already a little harder than they would be standalone, and those two things kind of cancel out. If you don't get the points, then you're weaker than you would be, and the scenarios get harder, and well, that's not desirable. Kind of, give us a reward. Give us like an actual reward. But it's okay to make the scenarios hard to make up for the fact that we're getting rewards. Just don't make them hard equal to our rewards, because that makes it feel less like a reward. Alright, anyways, back away from campaigns. We might talk about that a little bit. I've got some Galaxy's Most Wanted ideas that may even involve changing the campaign. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe one day, but not today, or not soon. So, Absorbing Man. Let's talk about Absorbing Man. So, Absorbing Man, the main issue with Absorbing Man, or one of the main issues, I don't know. The main issue is that he's easy, right? He's just too easy. He's a speed bump. He's delaying you, and the goal is just to beat him fast. It's not ever a can you beat him, it's a how fast did you beat him question, which is just, not that interesting of a question. So the goal here is to make him a little bit harder, so that it's not just automatic, and to make him a little bit more interesting. So the other problem that Absorbing Man has is that he's got this single, environment out, and that environment gives him a trait, and then when you get a new environment, it discards, and you can't interact with it. There's nothing you can do about the traits he has. He just has a trait. If it happens to line up with his treacheries, well, you couldn't do anything about it. You didn't decide which treachery you got. You didn't decide which trait he had. You didn't make any decisions. It's just, oh, you got punished because the scenario decided to be hard today. You didn't, because the scenario decided to be easy the way it does every other day, because he's got 4 times as many traits possible as he has cards that use them. Oh, whoops, I left a trait off. Alright, anyways. So we're going to look at this alternative Absorbing Man. So my first thought, maybe the first thought that comes to many of us, is why doesn't he just get more than one environment out at a time? I've done a lot of things with that. I think there's interesting things to do there. Potentially, I've had it go up with delay counters so that as the game goes on, he gets more and more environments. I've tried various other things. Someone has a design hacker, I believe, put together a modular set that gives him some additional environments that have multiple traits. There's all kinds of ways to do it, but ultimately, I think the issue is that's it's part of what's wrong, and there's ways to make it more interesting. But what I wanted out of Absorbing Man, I think, as I took a step back and thought about thematically what would make Absorbing Man interesting, is if he had these traits, and as he gained those traits, they changed how he played. So I thought about this recently, and I thought, that would actually be really cool if he actually gained abilities based on the traits he had, instead of it just being this random forced response after he makes an undefended attack, which is the least interesting thing in the world, because you just block him with allies and they're not undefended and it never triggers, or you let it trigger because it's not a big deal to you. That's pretty much the interaction. Is this going to hurt me? No. Oh, it's a threat. I can deal with that. I don't care. It's an extra damage. That's fine. Oh, discarding a card? No, I'll just block that with an ally. Thanks. So what if it was more interesting? That's the idea. What if Absorbing Man's traits were more interesting? So, okay. So the initial idea I came up with was to have him have cards for the traits that would be substantial changes to the villain, but that's a lot, and I wondered if I could get away with less. So I tried to get away with less, and I think it worked out. I played this scenario one time, so knock on wood, that one time was fun. It worked out well, but maybe it won't be fun every time. Maybe it's still a little too random. But we played with Iron Man and War Machine teaming up, and he gave us a little bit of a run for our money. We nearly lost, but we pulled it out, and then we won. And it was fun. Those are that's fun times, right? That's when Marvel Champions, in my opinion, is at its best. So here's Absorbing Man, how I have changed him. So this is what I'm going for. He gets a trait. He gets traits from the environment and from some other stuff, which we'll talk about. And when he has those traits, he gets some changes to his stats. So if he has ice, he's +1 scheme, stone +1 attack. Metal gives him steady and overkill. Basically, he's hard to stop when he's made of metal. Yes, this includes steady keyword, which did not exist at the time of Rise of Red Skull. A little anachronism. Oh well. And if he gets the wood trait, he gains Retaliate 1, and his attacks gain piercing. Kind of the idea is he has thorns, and thorns are sharp, and you don't want to punch him, right? It kind of comes. His treachery is called piercing thorns, and that I was like, yeah, that could be what wood does. I've had other thoughts about this, but what I'm going for here is, I guess a concern I have is if everything piles on too strong into one thing, then it might be. This scenario might get too hard. So I'm trying not to pile on too many things all in the same direction. And so they kind of are spread out, which does hurt the thematics a little bit. If everything was all in the same direction, then it would feel possibly more thematic. But one thing that's hard to do, because these simple changes that I've made here, the simplest changes are all many of them in the same direction. And so there's limited things that you can do. All I'm trying to say. So I did not create a stage 1. I'm not quite sure what you'd do with stage 1. You could probably drop off steady and piercing, maybe, or overkill and piercing. So just make him steady, retaliate 1, +1 scheme, +1 attack. Or maybe ice and stone would be even weaker than that. I don't know what you could do to make them much weaker than that, but yeah. So I don't know what stage 1 looks like. I did not invent a stage 1. I don't play standard. So, you could make it just ice and metal gives him +1 or +1 scheme, and stone and wood gives him +1 attack. There's an idea for what it could look like. Okay. So the second thing, these environments. So the environments give him a trait, and they do not discard automatically. That's why the main scheme's over here. So this
idea that the environments just switch whenever they switch really adds a lot of randomness, lack of control, and it also weakens him a lot. So the first thing is, in order to move him off an environment, you have to hit him. So I got rid of the delay counters. If you wanted to play this in a campaign, you could just take however much threat's on here and add that to Red Skull. Easy fix. But in terms of the delay counters, I just think they're an extra mechanic that's not really doing anything for the scenario. If he gets to 5, then suddenly everything gets one number worse, and that's just not... It was an interesting idea to have something that would affect the campaign but also affect the scenario. I think that was a cool idea. It just didn't work in practice. So instead, what happens is he gets terrains, these terrain environments, pretend this says terrain, and in order to get him off of it, you have to hit him. So it's still a little bit of a rush scenario because you're going to attack him. You have to attack him because he has these things and they're bad. So after you attack Absorbing Man, you can spend a mental resource. Discard the top card of the encounter deck. If you dealt more damage than the boost icons on the discarded card, choose and discard a terrain environment. So he's going to go into the woods, and then if you want to get him out of the woods, you have to hit him and deal some damage. So if you want to get him off of, the wood trait, you have to hit him. You have to hit him hard enough that you can push him. Now, you're running chances. Otherwise, you could just hit him a bunch of times weakly and hope that one of those is enough. So you can beat him up a bunch of times and discard your way through the encounter deck, which is nice because he's got a pretty big encounter deck. Of course, a lot of cards have Surge, so that helps. But anyways, the idea is this helps him cycle his encounter deck, which will help him get more environments out on a more regular basis. And also, it gives this kind of variability, which makes things interesting. Of course, if you hit him for 4 or more, you got it. He moves. If you hit him for 3, you've got a pretty good chance. Not got that many 3 boosts, but and if you missed, you knocked off a 3 boost. So hey, that's still good. You can be happy either way, right? If you knock off a 0 boost, then you got to move him, and you got rid of probably one of these stars. So that can be nice too. But anyways, that's kind of the idea. So you got to hit him. You spend a mental resource. Kind of the idea is you have to outsmart Absorbing Man. I originally had this as a fist, but he has a lot of other stuff that's fists, and I didn't want to make him all fists. So this kind of gives a nice... He uses all the resources, which is good. So he uses mental to get rid of the terrain because you got to trick him to push him off the terrain or something like that. So those are our 4 terrain environments, which each give him one of the 4 traits as they do normally, except for instead of being printed on Absorbing Man, they're printed on the cards themselves. I moved around a little bit the things they did, and the big change I made here is that instead of after an undefended attack, it's just after he activates. You have the power to get rid of this, so it can be a lot worse. And so it is. They work every time they activate. They use the smaller effect, just the kind of the minimal take 1 damage or place 1 threat, discard 1 card. Instead of resource icon, it's discard these days, and heal 1. Right. I did move these around a little bit, and the reason is just didn't want ice to get too bad. Because it's on activation, if ice is +1 scheme and adds an extra threat, it's like he's got +2 scheme. Similarly with stone, no, stone always healed damage, so I left it alone. But +1 attack is not on wood, so that you don't pile on the damage too strong either. So they go in a slightly different direction, and this is part of that. There's the issue that is a little less thematic, right? But not, I don't think, much less thematic. I mean, ice is slowing you down. That's why you have to discard cards, and that's why it gives him +1 scheme. Wood is giving him these thorns, and he's hitting you for all these little tiny bits of damage, and it's annoying. Splinters everywhere, right? Stone, he uses to make himself stronger, and he also uses it to make himself tougher. So that works out. Anyways, that's kind of the idea. Hopefully that theming comes across well enough. And then we have these 4 cards. So in Absorbing Man Actual, there's Avalanche and there's Ball and Chain. So Avalanche now doesn't just deal some damage, it also gives him the ice trait. The when revealed is the same except for minus the delay counters. Basically, this is just Avalanche. Except for with this addition that now when he gets an Avalanche, he has the ice trait. So he can have ice trait and the stone trait and the metal trait all at once, and it's interesting. Ball and Chain, of course, is made of metal, so it gives him the metal trait. And other than that, again, exactly the same standard card. Now we've got 2 new cards, so I'm removing 1 Omnimorph duplication, so it's only 2 of those instead of 3, and replace it with this attachment, which is Mountainous Size. So this is a thing that happens with Absorbing Man in the comics all the time. He absorbs stone or absorbs the heart of New York City or whatever it is. He's absorbing the concrete and steel of New York. It makes him huge, right? Because I guess he's able to absorb not just doesn't just like change his skin, but he's like actually absorbing it or something. I don't know comic book logic, whatever happens, but I just thought that would be cool to incorporate here. That makes him stone, obviously. It reduces the damage he takes, and it takes 2 fists to get rid of it, so it's a little tough to knock him off of his Mountainous Size, but yeah, one thing so this card doesn't just automatically interplay, he has to get it, but yeah, so that's kind of the idea. If he does have this out, it makes it really hard to push him around, so this kind of becomes a high priority really fast, even though it's an effect that's not normally a high priority, right? Just reducing damage. Of course, it does also give him +1 attack because it's a stone trait, and that's what stone trait does. And then finally over here, also Ball and Chain. One thing I think is interesting, one thing I like about this is that metal gives him overkill, and he has 2 cards that boost into play to give him overkill. Now they're 0 boosts, so it's not like some other things that the designers have done, which will remain, which we don't need to talk about, but the details. But where they have 2 boosts and give overkill, or 4 boosts and give overkill, because they really like that swinginess. I don't like that swinginess, so instead it's kind of 0 boost. Well, Ball and Chain's a 1 boost, but yeah, he can get overkill off of boost effects. So warning, be a little bit careful about that. And then finally we have Into the Woods, which is just a alternative version of Avalanche. I didn't want to make it another acceleration icon, but I especially wanted to avoid either of these side schemes being like a crisis or a hazard where it's like you must remove it. It's better to make it so that you want to remove it because it gives it the wood trait and you want to get rid of that. That's kind of the point. But as an addition, it does give him an amplify icon, so it's not just sitting there doing nothing. And yeah, it has that same kind of interplay effect as Avalanche, but since he's running through the woods, it confuses you. When I played this, we did an extra encounter card, but that felt like a bit much, so I toned it down. And then let's see. So then, okay, all that's changed, and then as mentioned, so Omnimorph duplication needed a slight change because he can have multiple traits. It was always kind of a weak treachery anyways, because it only did 1 of these 4 effects most of the time, unless he had his side scheme out that gave him all 4. So yeah, he can have multiple traits. If he has 1 or fewer, this does its one thing in surges, which feels right to me. Maybe this should only gain surge in expert. I don't know. This is already pretty crowded, but it definitely needs to have surge when there's no traits out, because that's a thing that this Absorbing Man can end up with, is 0 traits. And then finally we have Stall Tactics, which is similar in that it just does stuff based on traits. So it gives 1 threat on the main scheme for each trait Absorbing Man has. It doesn't have the delay counters thing anymore. If he has 1 or fewer traits, this card's gain surge. Note, he always has 1 trait. So don't get that confused. I might get that confused, but hopefully I won't. So he always has 1 threat, but if he has any of these out, then it's 2 threat and it won't surge. And similarly, the boost effect is you can take 1 indirect damage for each trait, so it's 1 plus up to 4. So yeah, that's it. That's our Absorbing Man change. One big thing is that he does not have a when revealed effect to put super absorbing power into play. That probably weakens the standard game, but it makes the expert game way better because super absorbing power is such a good card to get in the middle of the game, and it's so bad to have at the beginning because it's the beginning you just have to prioritize thwarting it as fast as possible, and then it never shows up again because you kill Absorbing Man before this shuffles. Having it in the middle of the deck to just pop out there and be like, oh crap, he just gained 4 traits, and I already had this ice thing I was trying to deal with, and now how am I going to deal with all of the traits? So that's it. That's our Absorbing Man changes. Throw this over here. Throw this over here. This does still have the setup effect, so he still always starts with 1 environment. And I'm just going to delete all these cards. I just figured if we wanted to look at those while we talked, we could. All right, so we've changed out 12 of his 25 cards. Well, 13, 14, 15 of his 25 cards. This is a completely different Absorbing Man in many ways. All right, fighting against Absorbing Man today, we have Hawkeye. And I'll just spend a moment here to talk about Hawkeye. So I'm going to play a precon. Or a pseudo precon, an alternative precon. So I'm not going to go through all of the precons. I think I'm not planning on it anyways, but why not? I figured I needed an enemy for him to fight, and this is not the case like Risky Business where it's a really hard scenario. I hope it won't be that hard. So I'm hoping it'll be a moderate scenario, and I'm hoping it's one that's basically preconable. So we're playing Hawkeye with his leadership precon, and I've made the adjustment that I make in general for precons, so he drops from 4 copies of these 4 cards to 3 copies of these 4 cards to 2 copies of these 4 cards. And I added 2 cards, so I pulled in Inspiring Presence because I feel like that maybe goes with this overall idea. And Warning, because Warning's pretty good for Clint. And there's not extra basic cards to pull from, because, you know, packs after Rides of Red Skull, obviously they can exchange their own cards. There are extra leadership cards, so since we pulled Inspiring Presence from the first wave, we'd have to pull something from wave 2 back to wave 1 to make this work in our mental world that we've generated. I could have pulled from wave 2, but I didn't want to take any of the cards from Ant-Man's leadership deck. Although one of them's going to have to leave to make Ant-Man work, but and the rest of the leadership cards in wave 2 were garbage. Or no, I don't have to take one from Ant-Man. He just has to not take one from this packs to work, because he already has 4 leadership cards. So I just thought I'd leave him with those 4 leadership cards and not run any from the packs. So I just figure we can go without ever having All for One in a precon, because it's such a garbage card. United We Stand is actually pretty good, but you know, it only works in Expert, and I understand why those aren't in precons because it's standard. So I mean, it's not awful in standard. We could have put United We Stand instead of Inspiring Presence if we decide that that would have been better. Cool. All right. Anyways, that's the idea. Warning was a duplicate, so Warning would just be a box reprint. That happens. Okay, so Vibranium Arrow actually is pretty nice here, because that... Oh, okay, so we need to do his start thing. He starts out with Ice. And we would rather he not have Ice. Although it's not the worst thing ever. It gives him +1 scheme, but discard a card. Discard a card's the worst, actually. It is the worst thing ever. I changed my mind. So, yep, that's important. We definitely want to shoot him off of that. So Vibranium Arrow is a nice way to do that, although we could Electric Arrow it and just hope. assuming we want to do that, let's say we electric arrow it instead of vibranium. We pay 2 for the electric arrow and a mental. We need to get our bow. That leaves us with basically no cards, so hold Goliath, I think. And I'm just not gonna do anything. So we discard a card to search for Hawkeye's bow, because I don't want to get a card that I really don't want to play. Oh, I could have gone for an expert marksman. Alright, anyways, we got a bow. Flipped hero form. We pay 2 for an electric arrow. Deals 3 damage, and he is stunned. Then we spend a mental to do this main scheme thing. So we spend a mental, we hit him for 3, so we discard the top card, and it has less than 3 boosts, so that kills the Snowy Hillside. Yay! We are actually going to use Hawkeye to thwart here. Cool. 1 threat. Absorbing Man is stunned, so we don't get anything there. These were all shuffled, right? Alright. And we get Swinging Stone. Cool. Absorbing Man attacks against me. This is just normal, though. So I guess I'll have to take it. And we take 3 damage. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4 for Goliath. Who's cool. He can thwart for 2. And we're going to go Alter Ego and recover for 3. Because, yeah. Hawkeye is pretty frail. Yep. Ready. Draw 6. 1 threat. Absorbing Man schemes for 2. Ouch. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then he surges into exhaustion, into his ball and chain. Alright, so I'm going to need a fist for that. Ooh, I don't have a fist. That's annoying. Because, yeah, metal. That's what gives him overkill. And steady. Oof. Well, I guess I can 2 for Sonic Arrow and 2. Shoot. Nope. I can't. Why don't I have a fist? I have all mentals. We're going to flip to hero form. Overkill and steady is not piercing. So what we're going to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, is play War Machine. And Goliath is going to thwart for 2. Okay, we got some fists this time. 1 threat. Absorbing Man attacks. War Machine for 3, 4, 5. Knocks off his stuff. A single encounter card. It's Avalanche! Alright, well, we gotta kill this energy resource. You know, you're not making things easy on me. 2 threat, let's knock off the ice. You know what? I could have taken 2 indirect damage instead. I'm going to do that. I took 2 indirect damage instead. I needed to not discard that because I need to do some building. Alright, expert marksman. Sonic Arrow. Vibranium Arrow. Which we spend to play Sonic Arrow. 1, 2, 3, and he is confused. Of course, he's steady, so we're going to need to discard Warning to shuffle that back into his deck. Then I'm going to thwart for 1. And need to make a decision as to whether I want to stay hero form or go alter ego. He is confused, so I think I'm going to go alter ego and avoid problems. Also lets me get a 6-card hand, which hopefully I can use to do some good stuff. Hey, I finally got a cable arrow. Alright, he's confused. 1 card. I said 1. I didn't really mean it. Surges into Shadow of the Past. He's going to grab Mockingbird for me. That's not the worst thing ever, because I was having issues getting her. Except for that stinking 5 threat. I could use less threat. Alright, the rest of these cards I'll shuffle in. And he gets an Abandoned Facility. And Stall Tactics. Places 2 threat, because he has Metal and Brute. And that's nicely does not surge. So that worked out for me. Alright. I need some serious help. Alright, US Agent only costs 2. For US Agent. Cable Arrow is free. That could be Mockingbird. I think it wants to be Mockingbird. Okay. We're going to flip to hero form. Goliath gets +4 attack until the end of the phase. He's going to punch out Crossfire. Yeah, because 3 damage isn't going to do it. We are going to play a Cable Arrow to remove 3 threat from that scheme, and then War Machine is going to thwart it for 2. So the side scheme's gone, we got Mockingbird. We pay 3, which is actually 2 for Mockingbird. Alright, we're going to punch him for 3 and spend a mental resource to attempt to discard that. 2. Phew. Thank goodness. And then for 1, we get out a second Expert Marksman, and now Mockingbird can go ahead and thwart for 2. Alright. We's alive. 1 threat. Absorbing Man is attacking me for 2 plus a boost. This could be bad, but I think I'm just gonna take it. Way bad. Alright, 4 damage. Oh, I let him team up with the Wrecking Crew, because I thought that was, you know, thematic. Each elite minion activates. If no minion activates, you gain surge. Key. Alright, it's the Wrecker. That's what I like to see. An 8 health minion. Yup. Three Black Knight. I think we're just gonna be killing him. So 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom. I guess instead of that, it would be just as easy. 7, 8, 9. Boom. Then we're going to exhaust ready my bow. We're going to spend the bow and this extra marksman. Knock 3 threat off the main scheme. Arrow, whatever. Arrow bow, everything. Alright. Black Knight has 1 damage on him. Okay, we're doing pretty good. I have a double resource to play stuff. And I can finally play my quiver. 4 threat. Absorbing Man attacks me. We're going to spend Earth's Mightiest Heroes to pull Mockingbird back into my hand and take no damage. So instead of 4, we take 0. Yay! Attached to the villain. Great. Let's not let him keep that. We're going to spend this wild resource and exhaust our hero to not have him have a rifle. Thanks. 1, 2, 3. Man, could have used that resource. Could have used that resource to play my quiver. It's an electric arrow. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Stage 3. He is stunned. He has 16 hit points. As I said, this is still a little bit of a rush scenario. Also, I'm sure played along, helped along by the fact that I'm playing Hawkeye. Extra encounter card. One threat. He is stunned. That helps a lot. He had a master plan, which is probably going to confuse me. Nope. It's going to give him every trait ever. And it's Bulldozer. Great. This is great. 16 damage, huh? No. 7. 7 seems pretty doable. Look at that. Team training is great. Alright. 2, 4. Shoot. 7. Because he has Villainous, I really don't want him activating. Sonic Arrow. Shoot. That doesn't work. I think, actually, 3 threat to knock that off, so that we can Sonic Arrow. Did I already do it? No. Oh, he had like 6 extra hit points also. So that knocked off 6 hit points, which is great. We're going to play a Quiver. We're going to use my Quiver. To grab a Vibranium Arrow. War Machine can thwart this for 2, and we can go Alter Ego and recover so that we don't die. One threat. Absorbing Man is confused because he lost his all traits, but Bulldozer still schemes for 1. Oh, that shouldn't have a star. That should be a 1. That's what the original card was. And then he gets Piercing Thorns, which makes me discard a random card. Random card. By warning. You never were in my hand when I was getting attacked. Let's see, I got 6, 12, 16. Yep, no problem. Alright, let's just win. Boom, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ready. Sure, we'll play the explosive arrow instead. Spend 1 to give Black Knight a Sky Cycle. Black Knight does 2. Exhaust ready. Black Knight does 2. Defeating him. War Machine does 2. Defeating Bulldozer. And himself. And finally, Mockingbird does 2. Team Training is such a good card. Alright, there we go. Absorbing Man is defeated. We survived the Wrecking Crew. And all of his trait business. So, yeah. That worked out. I was able to regularly push him off of his trait and kind of push through him there. But I still felt like it was a much more interesting scenario than base Absorbing Man, as you have to deal with all the extra traits that he picks up. I think it is probably a little bit better multiplayer than solo, just because he'll often pick up a trait and then use that trait in the same round, which he didn't do so much this game. He also didn't reshuffle, because still solo game. But yeah, so there we go. There is my Absorbing Man alternate versus Hawkeye. That was a fun game for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, like and subscribe. If you have any comments, any things you noticed, or think whatever you feel like you would want to share, let me know in the comments. And I will see you guys next time.